are going to Assalamu alaikum to all. So we are going to start in the 8th session of the I Karcief 2022. I would like to thank all the participants and organizers for this event. So we get there on the Saturday. So it must be working on this even the weekends. So I would like to call for the first paper. I haven't seen the names, but I want to say maybe it's in the different name. Is there Yana Rahmana or Prof. Suliasta? Yeah, are they here? I guess they're not, so we can skip to the third paper. Is that Dr. Hakime Yakup or Kaysar Ali or Adli Yakup are here? I assume not, so we move forward to the fourth paper. So if you don't mind, Prof. Rusni can we start with your paper? The Prof. Rusni is going to present a paper called Corporate and Sharia Governance in Takaful, an analytic review on applicability of regulations in Takaful sector in Malaysia. Prof. Rusni, floor is yours. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, Dr. Hakan, Dr. Aslan. The presenters will be Iman Huda and Nur Shawani. Okay?
Nur Shawani. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, inshallah.
We're going to present the fifth one.
Yeah, I said we can start with the fourth one. Is the corporate Sharia governance in Takaful.
Okay, we'll start with the fifth one.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, no worries.
yeah.
Okay, we can change. Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Please, sister, please briefly introduce yourself before you start your presentation so we can know you, and our participants also will follow the session at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, let me share the content first, okay?
Alright. Okay. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bawah ni. Assalamualaikum. Okay.
Waalaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Please, sister, continue.
So for this session, we will me and my partner will start. We first start on the. Okay, we will present on, we'll start on our presentation regarding legal framework of Takaful technology or Takatek in Malaysia and exploratory study. Okay,
Sorry.
Okay, sorry for the technical problem.
While you arrange your technical problems, sister, could you please just briefly introduce yourself, your level of education, if you're working, which university you're working, please just briefly introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Iman Huda binti Adnan, and my partner is Siti Nur Shawani binti Bisman. Both of us are postgraduate master student. We are currently in our second and third semester in the IUM Institute of Islamic Banking and Finance in Malaysia. Okay, all right. Okay, now we will start with our presentation. First, the title of our paper would be Legal Framework of Takaful Technology or Takatek in Malaysia and an exploratory study. Next. All right. So for the content of our presentation, this presentation will include on introduction, on the legal and regulatory framework of Takaful in Malaysia, analysis on legal and regulatory framework in digital adoption by Islamic financial institution, which includes also Takaful in Malaysia. Next, we also discuss on the existing digital Takaful products in Malaysia. Next, we will focus on, then we will move on with the findings and also conclusion. Next. All right, so for the introduction, first, with the adoption of the fourth industrial revolution, together with the global community shifts towards the digitalization, it is already become inevitable for the businesses to embrace themselves and adapt themselves with the trend and go online. That is the term that is usually used nowadays. And this is very important, especially for the progressive development of Islamic finance in global. And Takaful, as one of the important components in Islamic finance, had also moved along with the tide and had also innovate themselves to, in order to serve the community much better. Okay, next. Okay, then the term Takatek that we are discussing here comes from the combination of two words, which is from the Takaful, and the tech comes from the word technology, or sometimes can also be said it is derived from the fintech. However, both of the combination of the words was there to describe on the adoption of the technology or digital innovations in the Takaful products and operations aimed at ensuring the utmost savings and efficiency from the current existing Takaful, traditional Takaful industry models. Right. The term Takatek was considerably new as opposed to the most commonly used of Islam Insurtech. However, the term Takatek has started to be widely used by the global community in the past few years, which the term had been inserted, especially in the global reports such as in the ICD Definitive Islamic Financial Development Report 2020 since the year 2020, IFN Financial Report since 2020, and also in the Global Islamic FinTech Report start from the 2021. Okay, and digital innovation in Takatek are very important, especially when the financial industry had to target on widening their reach towards the community, which also include financial inclusion, to ensure easy accessibility of the product and also to ensure the cost efficient of the product while providing the best risk protection services at the same time. Okay, next. Okay, for the legal framework of Takaful in Malaysia, we have Takaful is regulated, generally Takaful industry is regulated under the same supervisory bodies and also regulations, rules and regulations, the same as Islamic financial institutions, where the main regulation for Takaful industry in Malaysia are the statutory enactment, which is the Islamic Financial Services Act, which is the main regulation that governs on the Takaful business, Islamic financial business, and also Companies Act, which governs on the Takaful as a company entity. Right? IFSA provides on the definition, scope, business conduct, and also prudential requirements that is required upon Takaful operators. Next, we have the Central Bank of Malaysia or Bank Negara Malaysia policy document on Takaful operational framework 2019, which provides on the detailed guidance and guidelines on managing Takaful business operations. And also we have BNM policy document on corporate governance, BNM policy document on Sharia governance framework, and also MCCG, which stand for Malaysian Corporate Governance 2000, Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance 2021, which generally provide on the guidance and guidelines in regard to the corporate governance and Sharia governance framework for Takaful and also for Islamic financial institutions in Malaysia. Okay, next we will move on the analysis of legal and regulatory framework in digital adoption by Islamic financial by Takaful operators in Malaysia. Okay, as we have discussed earlier, there are many laws that regulate on Takaful operations and governance in Malaysia. However, in January 2022, the Central Bank of Malaysia, or BNM, had issued a discussion paper on licensing framework for the digital insurers and tagaful operators, addressing in detail on the proposed framework for the licensing of digital insurers and tagaful operators in Malaysia. The paper is currently on the stage of discussion as a discussion paper, and it's expected for the discussion paper to be issued by the next year, according to the
Assalamu alaikum. I think it's, is it frozen?
the published discussion papers. Okay. The connection.
I think we are having some technical difficulties.
Yes,
Just now, suddenly it's frozen.
Some internet
Now we can
disruption,
hear
so
you.
we-
Please continue. No problem. Please continue.
Boleh. Okay, sir. Internet email ke tak? Okay. Alright. Okay. So prior to the product, okay, in January 2022, the Central Bank of Malaysia had issued a discussion paper which focused on licensing framework for digital insurers and tagaful operators, addressing in detail on the proposed framework for the licensing digital insurers and tagaful operators in Malaysia. The prudential business and conduct requirements for digital tagaful business is addressed in the survey document. Okay, prior to January 2022, in 31st December of 22, the central bank, or the BNM, had already issued a licensing framework for digital banks, which focuses on digital licensing for IFIs, which are also our main point of reference when we are conducting this research. Okay, for now, we will focus on the four main points of discussion that we had choose, which is on the definition of digital tagaful business and physical access points, cyber security risk, foundational phase, and minimum capital requirement. Okay, first we will go to the definition of digital tagaful business. The definition of digital tagaful business that is provided in the discussion paper. So in the discussion paper, the paper had defined digital tagaful business to refer to the tagaful business as defined in section IFSA, to be that which means that it is digital tagaful business referred to the tagaful business that is carried on wholly or almost wholly through digital or electronic means. So in easy words, digital tagaful business as defined in the paper means that the tagaful business that is carried through digital means, digital and electronic means. Also, in the part C of the discussion paper, the paper further discussed on the mode of operations of the digital tagaful business, where it is expected for the business or the tagaful operators to be
Sister Imans, we cannot hear you. Can you hear us? I think you're having some connection problem. maybe if your connection is not that strong enough, maybe you can continue with that. Just turn off your camera. So maybe it will be speed up your broadcasting. Can you hear me, Sister Iman?
Yes.
Yeah, if you have facing the difficulty for the internet connection, maybe you can turn off your video, so it will be
Okay.
maybe faster. Just we will see your presentation and your voice. It will be
Okay,
maybe
sure.
better. Okay, thank you.
All right. Let me. Um. All right. Can you see the slide?
Yes, we can see the slides.
Okay, sure. Okay, I will proceed with my presentation. Okay, for the second point, in the part C of the discussion paper, it is further discussed on the mode of operations of the digital takaful business, where the takaful business is expected to conduct their operations to be through digital platforms, where in the requirement in the provisions, it is required only only one physical office is expected to be opened for the takaful operators to conduct the face-to-face customer service, only to conduct this business, which is to conduct the face-to-face customer service, administration purposes.
We cannot hear you. Sister Iman Huda, can you hear us?
Yes. So I am very sorry.
Yeah, yes. Will you able to continue? Is it possible that one of your colleague or co-author continue the presentation if they have better connection? Can you hear me? I think she totally dropped, or can you hear me, Sister Iman? Or is it possible that if you cannot continue, is it possible that one of your other colleague to continue to presentation if they have better connection?
Yes. This one.
Okay. Is it okay now?
We can hear your voice if you continue, so we can test whether it's working or not.
Okay. Right. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please
Okay, sure. Okay.
continue.
So I will proceed with the next point, which is cybersecurity risk. In operating the business with high dependence on advanced technology.
Can you share
that
your
might-
screen? We don't have any presentation on the screen. Will you able to share your presentation as well?
Okay. So I am very sorry. I thought I have shared it. Can you see the slide now?
Yes, we can see.
Alright, okay. So moving on with the cybersecurity risk, where operating business with high dependence on advanced technology will eventually expose both participants and the Takaful operators to imminent cyber threats and security risks, where the occurrence of cybersecurity incidents are also heavily decreasing, where the threats such as phishing, identity theft, and other social engineering threats. So in the both discussion paper policy and policy document on digital licensing framework, that does not provide detail on how and what items should be in the management plan of to ensure the cyber security, but it required the paper required the institution to submit the plan in ensuring that they have the risk management plan on site to ensure cyber safety and avoids operational disruptions in their software technology. However, in referring to the existing, we refer also to the existing Bank Negara Policy document in risk management in technology that is issued in 2020. The policy document had provided details on how to ensure security controls, such as for the internet security, to use the server-to-server authentication, and to use the secure tunnel such as VPN. For mobile apps, it is proper for the institution to conduct a proper due diligence that are expected to be done in ensuring the stability and security and assessing the applications, such as to establish the safeguard that ensures the security of the customer, such as the use of PIN numbers, which also can be used to mitigate the risk of identity theft and fraud. Also enforce the masking of sensitive customer and counterparty information when displayed on the mobile devices, and also to limit the storage of customers and counterparty information for solicited insurance businesses in mobile devices up to 30 days. Therefore, in the aspect of cybersecurity management, it's expected for the institution, the management plan would include such items and requirements that is also applicable for the digital Takaful business. Okay, now I will go to my other partner that will present.
Okay, moving on to the next point. I'm truly sorry I can't open the camera because you're using the same device. But can I just proceed without opening the camera? I will
Yes,
find,
please.
later question. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
please continue.
Okay, the next point that we are looking for is the foundational phase that being mentioned in the framework in the discussion paper, whereby the banks will provide the specified number of years known as foundational phase for these new detours, with some regulatory flexibilities in order like welcoming them going into the board. So nevertheless, for the one that being the new entrants, like the new, very new digital insurers and takaful operators, the gradual compliance is acceptable. And next, one of the most important things that being mentioned in the discussion paper is that for the takaful operator, to strengthen their technology resilience licensing framework, there is a specified number of foundational specified period, minimum of 3 years or up to 5 years, in regards to like giving the opportunity for these these digital banking to try the digital things that being used. Yeah, so paragraph 10.5 of digital banking, digital bank licensing framework clearly states that the bank imposes requirement for the licensed digital bank to obtain independent external assurance that to ensure that its internal controls and IT systems are in place to support its operation in sound and prudent manner, as well as in order for the independent external assurance to be conducted by the qualified party that really possess the expertise and good track record as well as experience, and it must be ensured that this person or the company being appointed is free from any conflict of interest. And the assurance that being conducted in order to ensure the control, the internet control, as well as the IT systems of this digital banking need to be submitted to the bank. So it will be expected the same requirement will be imposed for the new details that comes into the board. The next one is the minimum with regard to the paper. Clearly states that the bank is putting like consideration of setting up a minimum paid-up capital of only 400 by my colleague earlier. The second one, why the capital is lower, because there is a wide use of technology. So it was expected that it will really reduce. And the third one is for the time to market and time to gain market share. So that's why they set up the lower paid-up capital of 40 billion. So if the traditional one, the traditional takafu that not going into the digital one, that will be to have 1 million of paid-up capital. So the determination of minimum paid-up capital is actually being put there in accordance with the section 12.1 of ISA 2013, where it states that the license to business shall not with it
I think, Doc, Sister City, we lost your connection as well. We cannot hear you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me? Is there any other of your colleague possible to continue?
Okay, now, okay. So we'll continue with the existing products in Malaysia. So, so basically, actually in Malaysia, they already have the online sale products for the takaful. That one is being implemented
just
by the
want to kindly inform that your presentation is not on the screen yet. No, the presentation is coming. Okay.
Okay.
Yes, we can see the presentation now.
Okay, so basically, there is one takaful operators in Malaysia named Takaful Malaysia that actually already introduced the digital digital takaful products, meaning that you are participating in the takaful plan through online without going through the takaful agent. So it covers both the general takaful as well as the family takaful. So the application of digital here is that you can straight away apply the takaful plan in the specific apps named Click for Cover, as well as the underwriting questions will be there for you to answer, and then they will automatically calculate for you how much the takaful plan that you need to contribute every month. So the online health assessment also will be conducted there. There will be online quotation, as well as this e-certificate and e-medical card will be provided. So we're going to paperless. So with regard to the hospital admission, there will be online care. So basically, this is one of the takaful operators that goes to digital input. So moving on to the conclusion. So from the observation above, you can see that even at the early stage of the introduction of DITO's licensing framework in Malaysia, through its discussion paper, the bank is more open towards regulatory flexibilities, including lower minimum paid-up capital required, as well as flexibilities on prudential and business conduct requirements, and that depending on the level of risk posed by these individuals' DITOs. However, the regulatory resilience will be the very paramount consideration by the banks with regard to the operational business of these new DITOs, because they are going to depend on the technology, whereby it is posed to very high risk of cyber threat. So, and also one of the recommendations that we would like to suggest that even though it's going to be digitally online, there is still a need for the human interaction, I mean, through the apps, so that it's not only pure robot that going to answer any claim or any questions that being posed by the potential clients. So that's all from us. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Even though we had difficulties, I would like to ask, is there any questions? If you don't mind, I just want to ask one question. Is there any currently Takatek company established and working at the moment, or just it was the regulatory framework you just presented and has not been any established company or like in the started to operate yet?
So far that we found, there is takaful operators and they have set up their own products digitally. But in terms of specific takaful operators that like new takaful operators that operate.
Your voice gone again. So from the sentence
Yet to be established. So
yet to be established. Okay.
Sorry?
Your voice is gone. So as far as I understood, that currently the current takaful companies offer digital products, but digitally established takaful company is not exist yet. The regulatory framework is there. I think as far as I can follow, it's also new as regulation for Malaysia as well. So there's no company established yet fully digitally, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So if there's no other questions, so we can move forward to do another paper. The corporate and Sharia governance in takaful, analytical review on applicability of the regulations in takaful sectors in Malaysia. I think Brother Zilal Adnan is going to present. Brother Zilal, could you please also briefly introduce yourself, where you're studying, what you're doing at the moment, if you're working, place of work, before your presentation. Thank you.
All right. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and very good morning. All right. So today I'll be presenting on the corporate and Sharia governance in takaful, a review on the applicability of the regulations in takaful sectors in Malaysia. So together with me, there is Sister Nur Amalia Farhani. Both of us will be presenting on this topic. But before that, I am Zilal, and I'm currently working in one of the legal firm in Malaysia. And my colleague also is a lawyer, one of the practicing lawyer in Malaysia. All right, so without further ado, we would like to proceed with our presentation today. So what we're going to discuss today is based on the topic that we are proposing to discuss is on two important elements of the discussion is corporate governance and Sharia governance in takaful practice in Malaysia. So in this study, what are we going to study and to present to all of you is about corporate governance and Sharia governance, and we will also like to highlight based on our case study which has been conducted based on the available information on one of the takaful operators in Malaysia. So as has been known to the public, where in Malaysia, the takaful operators is considered as an Islamic institution which is governed or administered by a Central Bank of Malaysia, or we call it Bank Negara Malaysia, or in acronym is BNM, who regulates the Islamic financial landscape in Malaysia, where for takaful operators, that when they want to operate the takaful itself wholly, they need to consider a set of practices, which in our study, it refers to corporate governance practices and also the Sharia governance practices. So we are going to divide the discussion into three parts. The first part is we are going to discuss on the corporate governance part. Second, we'll discuss on the Sharia governance part. And the third one, we are going to discover what are the applicabilities and the compliance status of one of the takaful operators in Malaysia with regards to both of these practices. Okay, let's move to the first part, which is the corporate governance. What is corporate governance? Based on both definitions that I have shared with you in the slides now, more or less, we can see that there is like similarities in this definition of corporate governance. What are they? The first one is that corporate governance refers to the set of practices, how to manage and how to direct corporate organizations. That's number one. Second one is it refers to this set of practice brings or adds more values to the corporate organization. And the third one, it considers or it takes into account the interests of the stakeholders in that corporate organizations. So these are the three elements or the three important elements of a corporate governance in Malaysia specifically and in financial landscape generally. So when we are talking about a regulatory framework on corporate governance for Takaful in Malaysia, so we decided to focus on the act or the legislations which are currently in force in Malaysia to see how does these provisions is applicable and has been complied by the Takaful operators. So we look into the Companies Act, and we also look into Islamic Financial Services Act, IFSA 2013, which is specifically governing the Islamic financial institution. And then we also look into the Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance, which is specifically dealing with the corporate governance subject matter. And the fourth one, we are referring to BNM Policy Document on Corporate Governance 2016, where BNM, it refers to the Central Bank of Malaysia policy document. Okay, but one thing that I want to highlight is that the MCCG, Malaysian Code on Corporate Governance, it only provides the best corporate governance practice because there is no formal sanction for any non-compliance towards this MCCG. But for the Act and for Companies Act, IFSA, and policy document, there is like a high bindingness effect on those provisions. Okay, now, in this study, what we obtain is that among the important elements of corporate governance is we are going to have an effective board of directors, because we need to ensure that there is a best practices, there is a best and effective board of directors to govern or to manage the undertaking of the business of the corporate organization, specifically the Takaful operators. So the general rule, which is has been laid down in all of the four provisions, is that the directors among the directors of the Takaful operators company, he should not be disqualified under any act, and he should be fit and proper to be a director lah. And then, but however, in MCCG and the policy document on corporate governance, both of these regulations specifically provides that a political figure is not encouraged to be among the board of directors. And one of the interesting point that we can see in the composition of board in corporate governance, under corporate governance, is that the MCCG has provided one woman empowerment, I can say one woman empowerment provisions, where it requires at least 30% of the board of the directors of the institution or of the corporate organization. There must be at least 30% in the of women in the board of directors. Okay, now that is from the aspect of effective board of directors. Second one, we are dealing with the disclosure and transparency, which are also among the important elements of corporate governance, because in the Companies Act and under IFSA, the director must disclose their conflict of interest if there is any conflict, or if there is any interest that they have regarding any transaction or any contract that the company or the takaful operators would need to enter into. And then aside from that, MCCG and the policy document from BNM also requires the board of directors to also disclose on the integrity part of it, which is they need to disclose on whether the internal audit committee is free from any conflict of interest, and they also need to disclose their status of compliance with corporate governance practices. So that is among the disclosure, that transparency that the takaful operators need to comply with in regards with the corporate governance. And one of the things that they need to also consider is about the relationship with the stakeholders, especially the shareholders. In this thing, only the MCCG and the policy, only the MCCG, which provides the holistic approach in maintaining good relationship with the stakeholders, i.e. the shareholders and the other third-party stakeholders like the consumers. However, Companies Act and IFSA only focuses on the shareholders, and the policy document, however, does not address how to maintain a good relationship with all the stakeholders in takaful operations. Okay, moving forward to the Sharia governance, I would like to pass the floor to Sister Amalia Farhani.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
and I will proceed the presentation on the part of Sharia governance for takaful operators in Malaysia. So there are three laws that we referred for the Sharia governance, which is the first is Central Bank Act 2009, and second Islamic Financial Services Act 2013, and the third one is Sharia Governance Policy Document 2019. Okay. For the Sharia governance in these three acts, CBMA 2009, IFSA 2013, and SGPD 2019. For the first part, which is the responsibilities appointment, Secretariat of Sharia Advisory Council, it is only mentioned in the Central Bank Malaysia Act in section 52, section 53, and section 54, because Sharia Sharia Board in Malaysia divided into two parts, into two levels, which is Sharia Advisory Council and Sharia Committee. So CBMA 2009 deals with the first part, which is Sharia Advisory Council. And IFSA 2013 and SGPD 2019 did not provided anything on related to the Sharia Advisory Council, because IFSA and STPD focus more on the second part, which is a Sharia Committee. Okay, for the responsibilities and appointment of Sharia Committee, CBMA and CBMA did not provide it, and in IFSA 2013 and STPD 2019 mentioned about the responsibilities and appointment of Sharia Committee. However, SGPD 2019 mentioned more details in relating to the Sharia Committee than IFSA 2013. For the responsibilities of Board of Director, both CBMA 2009 and IFSA 2013 did not mention. However, SGPD 2019 did mention about the responsibilities of Board of Director in Part B, Paragraph 8. And for the meetings, composition, and Secretariat of Sharia Committee, both CBMA 2009 and IFSA 2013 did not mention. However, SGPD 2019 mentioned about the meetings, composition, Secretariat of Sharia Committee in details. For the next slide, for Sharia culture and remuneration and transparency and disclosure by Sharia Committee and Board of Directors, both CBMA and IFSA did not mention, and SGPD 2019 did mention in detail in Part F, Paragraph 20, and Part G, Paragraph 22. So moving on to the next slide. applicability and compliance of MNRB, Malaysian National Reinsurance Berhad Holdings, with Takaful Corporate Governance and Syariah Governance in Malaysia. For our paper, we choose Malaysian National Reinsurance Berhad Holdings to see the applicability and compliance of the holdings with the regulations of corporate governance and Syariah governance in Malaysia. MNRB comprises of leading wholesale provider, which is the first one is Reinsurance and Takaful, which is a Malaysian Reinsurance Berhad and Malaysian Dubai Limited. And the second one is Takaful Operators, which is Takaful Ikhlas Family Syndrome Berhad and Takaful Ikhlas General Berhad. For this paper, we in order to see the applicability and compliance of MNRB with the law and regulations, we refer to the three main documents, which are the first is Corporate Governance Disclosure 2021, annual report for the financial years ended 31st March 2021, and board charter of the group company. Okay, moving to the next slides. From our analysis, for the composition and meeting attendance, board of director and Syariah committee members. For the composition in corporate governance, is stated that majority of the BOD must be independent directors, and for the Syariah governance, it's stated that it must be at least 5 Syariah committee members in the board of director composition. And if you look at the MNRB compliance, it complied with the corporate governance because independent non-executive directors constitute 83.3% of the total board members, while non-independent non-executive director or chairman constitute 16.7%. And for the Syariah governance, we complied with the MNRB complied with the Syariah governance. And for the part of attendance meeting, Syariah governance provided that at least 75% attendance of the members, and for the Syariah governance, at least 75% attendance from each committee. And the same, at least the same. And if you look at the MNRB compliance with the corporate governance, it complied because all the board of directors showed 100% attendance. And for the Syariah governance also, it complied because all Syariah committee members complied with the attendance, except one, because it appointed late appointment, so only comply with 50% attendance. So for the frequency of meeting, in corporate governance, it did not mention, it did not provide anything on the frequency of meeting. Meanwhile, in Syariah governance, it provided that at least once in every 2 months, meeting must be conducted. And for the MNRB compliance, it complied with the corporate governance because MNRB scheduled its own meeting at least 6 times a year. And for the Syariah governance, it also complied with the Syariah governance because the total 8 meetings were held by the MNRB. So for the next table, I will pass to the Zilan.
All right, so I'll continue with the remaining part of the practices of corporate governance and Sharia governance, where under corporate governance, there is a maximum tenure of independent directors of the Takaful company, where they have maximum tenure of 9 years. So the independent directors should have or should be in the board for the maximum of 9 years only, or else they can later serve as a non-independent director after the 9 years, but with the justification and the shareholders' approval, provided that they conducted a 2-tier voting process lah. And they can also choose a second option, which is to take a step up, this alternative, where the Takaful company can put a provision or the written provision of their company where the maximum limit is 9 years. So MNRB in their practices, they have complied with the second alternative, where they complied with the step up, where they limit the tenure of their independent directors up to 9 years. So currently, we can see that all of the 5 independent non-executive directors does not exceed the cumulative term of 9 years. So it can be said that they have complied with the provision. In Sharia governance also, there is a maximum limit of 9 years in the same institution, where MNRB has complied with it, where 3 Sharia committee members are appointed to replace 4 of its members that has already exceeded the 9 years. So they are complying with these provisions, which is the independent non-executive director should not be in the board more than 9 years. So with regards to the last item, which is attendance in their meeting, so as I have said before, the board of director of the institution or the takaful company, including the takaful company, must have at least 30% women directors. So we can see whether MNRB has fully complied with this requirement, is that they have 2 women members in the board, which currently representing 30% of the total board members. So they are complying with this requirement. And also under Sharia governance, there is only 1 woman in the Sharia committee, because we can see that there is no such percentage or quota which shall be fulfilled by the board of directors under Sharia government, unlike the corporate governance. Yeah. So based on this study, what can we deduce from it is we can observe that there is a high level of compliance toward both a corporate and Sharia governance by MNRB, one of the takaful operators in Malaysia. And we can see that from the comparison of the corporate practices adopted by MNRB Holdings, that their disclosure from all of the 3 documents that Amalia has said to us previously, their disclosure are more holistic and more uniform and more detailed compared to the Sharia governance disclosures in their annual report. Because the Sharia governance disclosure are quite limited only towards the issue of Sharia committee composition and the meeting attendance, unlike the corporate governance disclosure, which also touch on the transparency aspect, which also touch with the women's composition and other important or necessary items lah. And upon that, what we can conclude from this presentation, that there is a legal and regulatory framework which I can say it is sufficient and it is holistic enough for takaful operators to comply with. However, the takaful operators or the takaful company may do better to improve their disclosures on the Sharia governance, so that they can include more important information that is needed for the interest of the stakeholders, such as the shareholders and the consumers and also the investors, whether their undertaking of business of the takaful itself is Sharia compliant, and also it brings benefit to most of the stakeholders. And it is undeniable that both corporate and Sharia governance framework work harmoniously and complementing each other, especially in establishing the unique and distinctive features of the takaful industry as opposed to the conventional insurance. Because at the end of the day, the gist and the idea of takaful itself is to help our Muslims which are in need in certain events or in anything that any shortcomings that they are having. So with that, we conclude this presentation on the corporate governance and the Sharia governance from the perspective of from the legal and regulatory framework perspective in the takaful industry of in Malaysia. If there is any question, we are open for that.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Is there any question? I guess presentation was clear and precise. Thank you for the presentation again. Would you like to move if there's a third paper author is here? We would like to move that one. Because as far as I see, the other presenters are not here. That's why I provided more time. Normally, we are restricted on the 15 minutes for each presentation. However, we had other presentations are not here. I think there's some change in the program. So it's provided you more time, so you had explain in detail. Thank you again. I just want to give for last call, is it Dr. Hakima Yakup or Kaiser Ali or Adli Yakup? Any of the authors are here for the paper, The Effects of Compliance Regulatory Framework in Financial Industry? So I assume they are not here or the program has changed as well. I would like to thank all the participants and listeners and the presenters and the organizers. So we can end the session here. Thank you very much for your time. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you, Prof.